China and Russia are testing new technologies to weaponize space. Can the U.S. Space Force keep up? Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. It's the new year, and my New Year's resolution is to be healthier. Unfortunately, it's winter in New York, and let's just say I'm not getting my 10,000 daily steps in. The good news is part of being healthier is to eat right, and that's why I recommend starting your day with Magic Spoon. It's a high-protein, gluten-free, and low-carb cereal. And it tastes great. I'll tell you more at the end. So, it's been a little over 2 years since the U.S. Space Force was founded. While it was controversial at the time, probably because it was done under President Trump, there's no question that the U.S. needs to defend itself in space. Seriously, did no one learn anything from that documentary, Independence Day? And the U.S. needs to defend itself in space now more than ever, since Russia and China have both been experimenting with space-based technologies that could be used against the U.S. and its allies, and they're getting more and more advanced. Although Russia is still using old-fashioned space poison. And with both countries making moves to invade other countries, this could throw a real wrench in the U.S.'s response if they were to invade. 2 years ago, Russian spacecraft were found shadowing a U.S. spy satellite. Someone should probably warn that U.S. satellite not to drink any tea. And Russia's been conducting anti-satellite missile tests. The most recent one was just last November. Russia warned at the time that if NATO crosses Russia's red line, it risks losing all 32 of its GPS satellites at once. Although that won't be much of a loss if the GPS NATO uses is Waze. You want me to make a left onto a busy street with no light during rush hour? I hope Russia space poisons you, Waze. Anyway, Russia's anti-satellite missile launch targeted one of its old satellites and created 1,500 pieces of debris. While that's insane, it is a nice change of pace to see Russia kill something working for them that's not alive. Actually, I may have spoken too soon, because get this, the impact of the strike even put its astronauts on the International Space Station in danger. They had to shelter in capsules to avoid getting hit by the debris. And that debris is still wreaking havoc. Earlier this month, it came close to hitting a Chinese satellite. Russia gonna Russia. They created almost as much debris as an LA train heist. But in case you thought China was the victim in all this, it's not. China has been weaponizing space just like Russia has. The Pentagon says Chinese military strategists regard the ability to use space-based systems and to deny them to adversaries as central to modern warfare. Over the years, China has been improving its surveillance capabilities. Last year, it said it launched a tiny satellite that it said can take crystal clear images of American cities. The Department of Defense is warning that China appears to have developed a satellite with a robotic arm that could attack other satellites. China also created a device meant to cause a satellite to steadily explode. An armed satellite that makes things explode. This new season of BattleBots is gonna be nuts. Rear Admiral Michael Studeman of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command says Chinese space technology capable of jamming satellites is on the march. Jamming means preventing satellites from communicating with their targets, usually on Earth. Wow. So satellite jamming must be why that Tinder date I had 2 years ago never called me back. That's the only explanation. I didn't get ghosted. I got orbited. Space Force's Vice Chief of Space Operations said the U.S. is dealing with reversible attacks on U.S. satellites every single day. Reversible attacks are attacks that don't do permanent damage to the satellite, so things like lasers, radio frequency jammers, and cyber attacks. This makes it tricky for the U.S. to respond. Does temporarily disabling or blinding a satellite count as an attack? If so, how should the US respond? It's not worth going to war over the space equivalent of a satellite firing off a roast joke, even if it temporarily disabled the satellite's self-esteem when the Chinese satellite said, "You're so fat, when you have a stroke, you smell burning Texas toast." General Thompson says we're at a point now where there's a whole host of ways that our space systems can be threatened. And he warns that China could become the dominant power in space within the next decade, even overtaking the aliens from that documentary, Independence Day. So what has the US Space Force been doing to fight back? I'll explain after the break. Welcome back. According to Space Force's Chief of Space Operations, the US faces a space domain that has gotten a lot more competitive. And because of this, we might see a fighting Space Force this year. Ooh, what does that mean? A fighting Space Force? Isn't that basically the plot to Space Jam? Oh, please tell me they're not going to try and recruit R. Kelly. One way the US Space Force is fighting back is by launching inspecting satellites. These satellites are to keep an eye on its adversaries' satellites. It's also eyeing a new mission, tracking ground targets from space. You might be wondering, those don't sound much like fighting capabilities. That's because most of the Space Force missions are not about attacking an enemy. The Space Force maintains and protects the military satellites, tracks space junk, operates GPS satellites, and maintains an arsenal of ground-based jammers that could block messages from adversaries during an attack. And Tinder dates from 2 years ago. The US Space Force faces a few hurdles to becoming the world's dominant space agency. For one, it's just 2 years old, which means it's still a toddler. And you can't trust toddlers in spaceships. You're not even supposed to leave them in hot cars. The Space Force also has a convoluted and bureaucratic process for acquiring new technology, which many fear will prevent it from updating and diversifying its satellites. The clearest point of concern on Capitol Hill and among analysts is the sluggishness when it comes to space acquisition reform, hobbled by bureaucracy. One of the reasons Space Force was created was to streamline the DoD's convoluted decision-making process. But so far that goal hasn't been accomplished. They're worse at making decisions than a married couple figuring out where to go for dinner. Stop arguing and just go to Applebee's like you always do, Dan and Lisa. According to Politico, bypassing the Pentagon's cumbersome decision-making process is expected to be most challenging. As China and Russia build up their anti-satellite capabilities, the US Space Force will have to build up and acquire new satellite technology fast. And part of that includes nuclear power. I'll explain more after the break. Welcome back. There is a chance that the US and China could soon be in a race for nuclear-powered satellites. According to aerospace think tank the Mitchell Institute, using nuclear energy in space has some big advantages over conventional liquid satellite fuel. Nuclear power is nearly twice as efficient in providing thrust. It can deliver more than 100,000 newtons of thrust, enough power to accelerate a typical automobile from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 0.3 seconds. Forget spaceships. When can I get nuclear power for my car? Your car's electric? Well, mine's atomic. Thrust is important if you're trying to move quickly in space. China's space program is already doing tests on nuclear-powered missions to the Moon and Mars. Of course the Chinese Communist Party wants to go to Mars. After all, it is the red planet. And experts from NASA say the US needs to invest more in nuclear-powered spacecraft to stay competitive. So the US Space Force will really need to pick up the pace if the US is going to stay ahead of its adversaries, particularly China. And we all hope it does, because no one wants to live in a world where China controls space, even if it makes products cheaper by using sweatshops on the moon. And this episode is sponsored by Magic Spoon. If you're trying to cut down on carbs or get all that sugar out of your diet, check out Magic Spoon. It's got 0 grams of sugar, 14 grams of protein, and only 4 net grams of carbs in each serving. Also, it's only 140 calories. Plus, it tastes really good. One of my favorite flavors is the frosted flavor. There's also a bunch of other ones I like peanut butter, cocoa, and fruity. So if you're like me and you're trying to keep unhealthy foods out of your diet, check out Magic Spoon. It's a great balance of being healthy and super delicious. And I've got a special link for you guys below the video. You can build your own 4-pack of Magic Spoon flavors and get $5 off. Magic Spoon ships in the US and now also to Canada and the UK. Plus, Magic Spoon is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. So click the link below and get your Magic Spoon now. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.